Welcome to Finding Holiness, where we delve into timeless Torah wisdom, revealing the sacred in everyday moments. Join us on a journey to elevate your spirituality and discover holiness in every aspect of life. I'm your host, Rabbi David Kadosh, and together, let's embark on a path of spiritual exploration. I hope you enjoy this next episode.
A little bit about how to bring and instill and even enhance harmony in our homes. And it's a very special time. Also, we would like to talk a little bit about some of the halachot of Taharat HaMishpacha, which is very important for men as well to know those halachot and to share them with their own wives and live together this journey of a Jewish couple. It shouldn't be just the wife's job to learn about Taharat HaMishpacha. It should be something that is shared between husband and wife. We'll soon see why. But we'll first start with a little bit on Shalom Bayit. I think it's a very bestseller topic these days. Everybody needs, myself included, that's what I'm here tonight, to learn from this beautiful chazal that we have available about how to enhance the Shalom Bayit, the harmony in the home. And as I mentioned to some of you, we would like to dig into some of the chazals which are maybe hiding around in the Gemara and the different parts of the Torah, and reveal some of the secrets about the important components of a healthy marriage, a strong relationship, and how we could basically use it for our own self. So I would like to share with you a line that I heard 25 years ago from the former chief rabbi of France, Rav Yosef Sitruk, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. It was actually at my own wedding. And he said a line that really impressed me very much, inspired me, about marriage. What is really marriage? And he said, marriage is not just about beautiful things, but it is rather about how to make things beautiful. So that's what we're about to talk. How do we improve in our marriages, our relationships, and as opposed to the conception of the world where you expect everything to be instant. Like you have instant news, you have instant everything today. Instant soup, thank you. So a lot of people are looking for instant success or results of success in marriage as well. And they make a big mistakes because marriage is a journey. It's a journey that we go through, that we take step by step to build up, right? It's not something that you expect the morning after your wedding, you wake up and you expect to find fortune in your marriage right there waiting for you. It doesn't work that way. It is a whole process, as we're going to soon see. And it is something that one has to be ready to work through and with patience. So we're going to talk about different subjects, different very important points into marriage. The first one, of course, is the importance of communication. How does one build communication? And if we're talking about communication, we can mention as well the fact that we need to build a bond with our spouses, not just a superficial bond, but an everlasting bond, a bond that would keep us forever and ever together. I think there's a source that the husband and wife find themselves not only in this world together, but even in the next world. I know that this is a thought which could be very disturbing to some, but let's try to get into it to understand what kind of bond are we trying to create and what's the meaning of this relationship. Of course, we'd like to also talk about Osher. Osher with an Aleph means fortune. How does one find fortune in his own life, or more particularly in his marriage. A very important subject is also the topic of love, which is so well misunderstood in the secular world, so much misleading so many people, but what true love is all about. And why is it that love in the world around us, outside of the boundaries of our Torah, our tradition, just simply, that's not a secret, just does not work? The more the world delves into the subject of love, the less it seems to be working. Why is that so? I come from France. You probably don't want to, our friend Mikhail as well, you probably don't want to know the type of advertisement that is posted around in public in France, whether it's on the streets or it's into newspaper, magazines. Something which maybe 30 years ago people would get a penalty for posting such sites. And with all that, you see that the rate of divorce just keeps on climbing and climbing, higher and higher. So obviously we have to turn to another source to be able to understand what is a strong marriage all about. And it goes without question that if we were to turn to someone to give us proper guidance for that, we would try to look for guidance and try to get instruction from the manufacturer himself, who is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, our creator, who knows the nature he instilled in us and why there are certain mitzvot in the Torah and how those mitzvot can enhance our marriages, secure and give us safety and reassurance that our relationships are strong and everlasting. There's two very important components to that. One is obviously Taharat HaMishpacha, this very special mitzvah that only the Jewish people have, where, surprisingly enough, we have a certain time when we have to kind of keep a distance, a physical distance for our spouses. How do we understand that mitzvah? How could that mitzvah enhance our relationship? Apparently it seems like it's taking apart the couple from each other, and we'll soon see how this does just the contrary. It's one very important component of it. We all know that anything that has to do with physical pleasure, we kind of lose excitement for very quickly. Whether it is a toy that you purchase for your son, your child, which after a couple of days he's not even looking at, or if you get a little older, you wish to buy a car of your choice. A lot of times you're all into it for the last few weeks, but after that it looks like a regular car, and you're already aiming for the next one, the next model. And it's true as well for Swiss chocolate. Whoever likes Swiss chocolate, if you imagine your wife would serve you that for breakfast, lunch, and supper, even just for one day, you would probably ask to remove that item from your house because you won't be able to even think about it. You just get tired of it. En français, on dit une lassitude. Anyone could translate that? Lassitude. En anglais, comment tu dis une lassitude? You get tired of something, but there's a better term, I guess, in English. Lassitude, you get...
You lose the taste of it?
Yeah. It must be a word. I didn't find the dictionary.
Fed up.
Oh, what?
Fed up.
What is it? Fed up. Okay, I guess. So how does one get over this problem with one's own wife? So that's an important component of understanding why the Torah gives us this mitzvah of Taharat HaMishpacha, which we delve into a little bit later into the Shiur Bezrat Hashem. But if you think that this is enough to have to secure your marriage, it's a big mistake. There's a very important component, a second important component, which is crucial in every relationship. And this is to have midot, Midot means a good midot, good character traits. Not only that, to understand that we're not perfect, no one is perfect, but at the same time, we should aim for perfection. Meaning, in the Torah atmosphere, we all know that the work that we have to do internally with ourselves to perfect our midot is a lifetime journey and task. It's not something that is achieved right away in a quick time, but at least it is something that we aim to work on. We try to raise our children in that spirit. Our students at school, in our Jewish schools, we try to train them to this concept that midot is something that you have to work on your entire life, whether it's for yourself or for your relationship with your parents and eventually your spouses and children. Midot is something extremely important. And for the people that don't believe in that, like in the secular world, you end up with, at times, realizing that the person you have in front of you, that you're trying to build a relationship with, could turn out to be a real monster. And I'm not exaggerating. You could just think of cases of people who unfortunately go into separation or even divorce and turn to be the biggest monsters ever towards their spouses. Even if the children would be in the way and would be targets. The same way we understand that certain people use their children to physically use them as targets and blame the Israelis for it. You have people who use their children as targets for trying to ruin an ex-spouse life. And that again has to do with midot. Just to tell you a little bit about how Chazal view the importance of midot, there's a story which is well known about a couple who didn't have children for 10 years, and eventually they decided we're going to go our own ways. Maybe we'll have a better mazal if you separate, and then each one will remarry. So before they got divorced, the husband says to the wife, she's still his wife at the time, he says, you know what, we had a very healthy relationship. We may have to go our own ways, but I want to stay on a good term with you. I'm going to tell you the following. You're going to look around my house and choose the best possible thing you could ever get from me. I want you to take that thing and it's going to be yours. And then we're going to get divorced. So the wife decided to give him to eat and drink, and eventually he fell asleep. He got a little high, he fell asleep, and then she decided to take him into her house. Then he wakes up, he says, what is that? Where am I? And she explains to him that you told me to take the most precious thing, and I didn't find anything else than yourself. And when they saw that, the love that they had between them, even at the time of separation, they went back to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, I believe, and he gave them a bracha that should have children. They stayed married, and sure enough, they had a child. So that shows what it means to have midot. And midot, of course, is an area of ben adam lachavero, between one man and another, his fellow, but it's also ben adam lamakom. When we understand that every neshama every person in Am Yisrael is a neshama, not just in the neshama, is a portion of a global neshama of Klal Yisrael, and we cannot, right? We have to have a special respect for every single Jew, no matter what happened in the past. Respect and keep everyone with dignity, respect everybody. So these things should never happen. But again, if a person doesn't work on his own midot, he's not into that spirit of avodat hamidot, of musar, of yirat shamayim, that important component will be missing, and obviously this could be very bad for his relationship. So again, the two important components we're going to discuss over here are taharat hamishpacha. How could that enhance the relationship, and how important it is for a person to have midot. We're going to talk different aspects, very down to earth, about how to bring midot into a marriage, into a relationship. So let's first start with communication. and see what does it mean to have a good communication in a relationship. I would like to read to you a quote from the Rambam about how should a person relate to his wife. How should a man relate to his wife? The Rambam writes, "V'chen tzivu chachamim," the chachamim instructed, "Sheyehyeh adam mechabed et ishto," that a man should be respecting, honoring his wife, yoter migufo, even more so than what he would honor himself. Ve'ohava kigufo, and should love her just as much as he loves himself. I skip a few words. Then the Rambam says, "Ve'yihyeh diburo ima benachat." His talk with her, the way he chats with her, he converses with her, should be benachat, gently. Velo yihyeh atzev, he shall not be sad, velo ragzan, or angry. So let's take one by one the requirement of the Rambam to be gentle with one's wife. Is very, very important. We find, for example, the Chachamim tell us that women by nature are pretty sensitive. You probably never heard of that before, right? And the Chazal have a very important line. They say, "Mitoch shedim'atah metzuya," because her tears are very easy to come out. It's as if they're right behind. They're just ready to pop out any moment. It's there. You just have to get it out. Kach ona'atah metzuya. So then they get very easily insulted and hurt physically. There's a different Chazal which says that, you probably know that, if you ever said something not nice to your wife, she will remind you of it years later. It could be 10 years. Some of you are not even married 10 years yet. But trust me, it could be even more than that. And there's Rabbeinu Bechaye that explains that. Why is that so? Rabbeinu Bechaye says, look at the origin of man and woman. Man was created from afar min ha'adama, earth. Whereas a woman is from the tzela, the rib of Adam HaRishon, which is a bone. Says Rabbeinu Bechaye, just take a little bit of water, mix it with earth, you're going to see it dissolves. So that's why a man is much easier to forgive, to forget, than a woman. A woman by nature, it's very hard. Once she gets hurt, she gets insulted, like it's the bone. Even if you pour water on it, nothing will happen. It's hard, like a rock. And that's their nature. So because it's their nature to be so sensitive, Chazal are very, very, careful to remind men, to be extremely pleasant, to be extremely gentle with their wives. That's what the Rambam says, benachat, to be gentle with your wife, with the way you talk to your wife, given her sensitive and delicate nature. It is also very important to create in a home a pleasant atmosphere. There are people, they walk into a home, into a house, and they can tell you, as soon as you walk into that house, you feel the warmth, you feel welcome, you feel sometimes even simcha, happiness around in the house, without even using any words. Just, it's there in the air. That's a Jewish home. That's what a Jewish home should be like, really. To create a relaxed atmosphere. Once in a while, it's good to use jokes when you talk to your wife. And sometimes if you could use a good sense of humor, it's also very important. Most of us are busy relating to one another about you do this, you do that. Have you prepared the kids to go to school? Did you do the shopping? All the technical things of life. Much too often we forget that we need to talk to our spouses just about creating a relaxed atmosphere. We all go through the stress of life, and women have that too. And it is many times the job or the duty of the husband to find a way to, relax the atmosphere, make the atmosphere pleasant and just fun, even fun in the house, to help your wife relax and feel good, and the children as well. It's not too much the topic of tonight, but we have to know that when the atmosphere at home is tense, when there is machloket, when there's strife, there's screaming, there's disagreement, the children suffer tremendously and eventually they grow not fully balanced. Their well-being is greatly affected by the atmosphere that parents bring into the home. So there are times when there's disagreement between husband and wife. It's not a secret. And that's okay. It's okay to disagree. There's nothing wrong with that. What's not okay is that to turn disagreement, to let it escalate to become a World War III, that is what's not okay. So that demands, of course, midot, good midot, demands also skills, how to learn to settle a disagreement, to come to a compromise. And for that, you have to know the right time to do that, the right day. If your wife came last week, she would have heard a famous thing that I mentioned, that it is very important for a woman when she greets the husband coming from work, not to lash out about all her difficulties that she went through during the day, but first to give a good meal to the husband. You'll thank me for that. And make sure the husband eats well. Chazal even point out that men like to eat, as opposed to women that love to speak, to talk, to chat. Men like to eat. That's why for those people where there's a kiddush and you have a separate section for men and women, usually the men's section gets empty very quickly while the women are busy talking. So I always thought, why don't we switch sides after a few minutes? The food is staying on the, what a shame. Let the men turn around and let them go there. It wouldn't be a smart idea. But in any case, Chazal say yes, a man likes to eat, and especially after a long day of work, of course. So Chazal say a woman should first, present the husband with food, let him relax, and once he's done, then you're ready to lash out. Tell him about the check that went back. Tell him about the washing machine that broke. Tell him about the children or somebody that insulted you at work. That's the moment. So that's on the woman's side. What about the men's side? You have to use a chokhmah. There are moments of very great closeness in the couple. This is when you could bring out certain issues that need to be solved. And of course, not only the right time is important, but the right way. How do we bring up something to our spouses? Criticism is the worst thing to use. Even if you feel that the other person is at fault, it's always best to say, I turn the attention to yourself. Let's say, I got insulted from your comments, rather than saying, you insulted me. Because once you turn to the other person, there's a mechanism of defensive, to be on the defensive, automatic, natural. So then the other person is going to try to excuse himself. Whereas when you say, I got insulted from you, first of all, you're not attacking anyone, and also it has a better chance to go through and perhaps to get a nice word from the other side. So like we said, it's okay to disagree. For those who came late, it's okay to disagree with your wife. Just make sure to learn how to settle whatever needs to be settled. And sometimes you need to come to a compromise. And there are even times, believe it or not, when you have to learn. That's not easy. Talking to myself, I know from experience, it's not easy. Sometimes you have to learn how to say one word, magic word. Sorry. It can be very, very painful to get this word out of your mouth sometimes, especially when you're aware that your wife was at fault at this time, in this instance. And many times if you're the first one to make the first step, a lot of times the wife may come up and say, no, I think it's my fault. But you have to be the first one to say you're sorry. A lot of times they just want to hear a nice word, maybe it makes them feel good. A lot of times they will. So learn how to find a way to settle a disagreement between husband and wife. It takes a lot of skills, a lot of patience, a lot of wisdom, and one thing that you should keep away from is to keep the issue under the table because you're not sure how to bring it up. You're not sure how to come up with a compromise. And we know a person is like a pressure cooker or like a spring. The more you press it down, as soon as you let go, it goes up very high. So the more, you don't want to create a situation where there's tension in the home. When one spouse feels stressed, under stress from the other spouse, and just chokes within herself, puts it under the table, and eventually another thing adds up until they cannot take it anymore, and everything bursts out. You don't want to get this. So you have to learn how to take every situation at hand and try to solve it one by one, at the right time, in the right way. I just want to tell you how important it is sometimes to get advice from the proper source if you're not able to solve any disagreement with your wife. And I'll share with you a story which is so dear to me. I just recently read that story, and I try to basically share it wherever I go. Every class of mine in Tiferes Beis Yaakov heard that story. Shul Yismach Moshe heard that story. And that's about a couple who had a child, a Siman Tov, a baby boy. And the father decided he wanted to name the child after his own father. Very common situation. And the wife said, Beshu panim ve'ofen. How do you say that in Spanish? What is there a way? How?
De ninguna manera.
Like there's nothing to talk about. This is not happening, she goes. So, why? The father just freshly passed away. It makes sense the father's father. So it makes sense that the father of the child should be able to give the name. No. Why not? So she says, very simple. They used to have a neighbor in the building who had a child by the name of Yaakov, who misken died from an accident. I'm not sure exactly the detail of the accident. And the wife said, look, I feel it's a very bad mazel to take this name for our own child. I won't go for that, I'm sorry. And misken, the husband, he feels bad for his father, he probably has dreams of his father who just passed away. This is the best thing he could do for his father, give him a name. So they went to see Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, great sage of the few years ago, passed away only a few years ago. And they presented the case to him. The first thing the rabbis listened carefully, and it's the first thing he turns to the woman, he says, as far as you're concerned, that it may be a bad mazel, a bad luck, for the child to be named after that boy that never passed away, this is nothing to worry about. There's nothing, you have to have no concern about it. Nevertheless, says Rav Shlomo Zalman, I still hold you should not name the baby Yaakov. Do you know why? And I'm giving you the choice, the chance to come up with perhaps the idea that went through the mind of this Chacham, this great sage, why he held that the name should not be given, the name Yaakov should not be given to that newborn baby. Although this was the name of the grandfather who was just niftar recently. Anyone could come up with an idea, why not?
So never forget about that.
Who?
The woman.
How?
The wife.
Which wife? The one who had the baby?
Yeah.
Why she would not?
If she names it Yaakov at the end, it's going to be...
But the rabbi told her there's nothing to worry about.
That boy is going to be living daily proof of Shalom Bayit every time between them.
That's the reason. You have to give yourself a challenge to fight the whole life of the child. You're gonna have an excuse to bring up the issue again and create a fight between you and your wife. I don't think it's a good idea. Anybody? I think
She would always associate the name with,
Yeah.
with the person.
that's not what the rabbi said. Because once the rabbi paskin that this is a false fear, that's such a thing as fears that are baseless. So the rabbi explained like this. You see, this child, Be'ezrat Hashem, will grow up to be 5, 6, 7 years old. And he's going to start going downstairs, play in the backyard with his friends. And eventually the mother is going to start calling her son, Yaakov, it's time to go up for a shower. It's time to come for supper. And the other woman, the one who lost a child by the name Yaakov, her heart is going to drop every time she hears her neighbor calling her beautiful, beautiful looking son, Yaakov, come home and this. And he says, because of that reason, Rav Shlomo Zalman says, I paskin you should not name the baby Yaakov. So first of all, we see from this story how great the Chachamim, how sensitive the Chachamim were to be so careful about things years ahead that no one in this room was able to come up with. This is the natural reaction of Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. You have to be concerned about the feelings of this neighbor of yours who lost a child. But also, in what's relevant to us tonight, we see the importance of, at times, bringing a disagreement between spouses to a third party. Sometimes it could be a Rav, it could be a therapist. You have to, not every Rav is competent for that, not every therapist is good for that. You have to make sure to find the right person. And sometimes those people could come up with ideas that we'd never think of, which would solve the disagreement, because now that makes sense to both the husband and the wife, the father and the mother. So just to...
In my opinion, I think they would have best compromise, if possible, for them to move out.
Move out. Right.
And have
Good,
the
good.
husband have
It seems to be from the story that there was no, financially, they were not able to handle, to afford it. So again, strife in the house, disagreement. Strife is never good. Disagreement is natural to happen, but we have to learn how to solve that either on our own self, and if you're not able to, try to get advice, get help from whoever you think could be there for you. And sometimes the solution comes and it's very, very worth its while, rather than just keeping it under the table and let it just, add up with another one like this, and eventually a person blows up. Like we see sometimes people blowing up. I don't think this is something that's unheard of. Even in communities, sometimes people just... And a lot of times it's because there's a lot of stress that's been adding up. And people don't know how to solve those things, those stresses one by one, step by step. Then they blow up. They just, it's like an atomic bomb, right? So you have to know that in a relationship, it's very important to solve issues one by one before it becomes too hard, before it becomes too much of an issue. We spoke about the powerful line from the Rambam, Lo yihyeh atzev, not to be sad, so that we mentioned the importance to create a pleasant atmosphere in the home, a relaxed atmosphere. We all have stresses, we all need that component to create a balance in our lives. And yet, this is what the Rambam says, Velo yihyeh ragzan, a person should not be angry. Anger. What's anger? Have you heard of something like that? Anger. Now we know Chazal are very, very specific about the destructive effect of anger, of kaas. And Chazal compare this. We could have a whole shiur just on that. And I think it would not be sufficient just to relate to all the different Chazals on this topic. But just to mention one, Chazal compare someone who gets angry to the Gehinam. Kol minei Gehinom sholtim bo. And a simple way of explaining this Gemara is to say that a person suffers tremendously himself when he lets go of his anger. He is the first target to the destructive effect of anger, whether it's turmoil inside of himself. And we know that there's even physical illnesses that can come to a person who is constantly or easily getting on his nerves. I think we have a doctor here. Is that true? People can get into illnesses?
It's not my field.
Not your field, but I'm sure you've heard of it. Something like that. It is. So, right, just to, like we said before, we're here to concentrate and to meditate about these important chazals that could only help us to enhance our lives, our relationships. And like we said, these things we want to keep away from. Anger, strife, and screaming in the house. You have to know a lot of times machloket comes into a person's house not because of him and not because of her either. Sometimes it is simply the Maaseh Satan. The Gemara, it's not Kabbalah, this is a Gemara Mefureshet with Rabbi Meir. The Gemara says there was a couple who always used to fight every Erev Shabbat. And the simple explanation is because the Satan doesn't like anything that has to do with Kedusha. When he sees Shabbat coming up, and you know what Erev Shabbat means, right? Erev is Milashon Ta'arovet. You have a feeling of the spirit of Shabbat already from the afternoon of Erev Shabbat mixed with the weekday at the same time until you get ready to go into Shabbat. So even on Friday already you have the Ruach, the spirit of Shabbat coming in, and he gets very upset, he gets mad. So he'll do anything to basically interrupt this feeling of serenity that gets into every Jewish home that keeps Shabbat. And that's what he tries to do. That's why many times, right before you're ready to go to shul or to light candles, this is the worst time. Something just breaks. Your crackpot just blows up. Something fuse blows up. Plate breaks. The kids smashes something. Always right before the worst time possible. The Maaseh Satan, you don't have to get excited. Just, let it go. And Rabbi Meir, in this case of the story, went into that house. He made a tikkun. I'm not sure what the tikkun was, but we know that the stories with Baba Saleh alav shalom, whose Hilula is tomorrow night. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. He made a tikkun and he chased away the Satan. But just to tell you, sometimes the machloket, don't blame it right away on your wife. She's not always to blame. And especially if you don't want to create machloket and let the machloket escalate into a battle, into a war. So don't blame it on her right away. Many times it's just Maaseh Satan. And like any machloket, if you analyze the cause of the machloket, of what brought about the strife between two fellow men, many times you'll see that it's a minute thing that created a little ill feeling between two people. But because it was allowed to escalate, it became like a tremendous machloket. So a person has to learn about Divrei Chazal, the Musar. We are all Bnei Torah Baruch Hashem. We all know that Chazal and the Torah Kadosh HaKadosh Baruch Hu is only here to help us to have healthy lives, to be happy. Of course, I would tell you, if you do Torah mitzvot, you're going to get Olam Haba. You're going to get a tremendous zachar in the next world. But that's not what I came here for tonight. What I came here for tonight is to try to bring down to earth how our lives and the important parts of our lives would be affected positively by keeping Torah and mitzvot down in this world. Not even dealing with Olam Haba, but in this world itself. So this is just a little talk about appreciation, about communication. And now I would like to go into the importance of appreciation. To learn how to appreciate your own spouse. So, there is a lot of sources in Chazal where we see the power the women have, how they could change the husband's life and help him to improve his life in many different aspects. I'll share with you some of the points that Chazal bring out, the Gemara Yevamot Samech Bet. But Chazal say that below Isha, below Simcha. Real joy is when you're married, and I understand that married doesn't just mean that you're civilly married, registered in the civil books, or not even that you went through Chuppah Kiddushim necessarily, but that means that you're working on your marriage to make sure that you have a healthy, respectful, and loving relationship with your partner. That's what brings true simcha to a person. You feel more established. We'll talk in the future, soon I would like to talk also about all the things that you could feel that your wife is benefiting you with. And I apologize if I have to be very outright in the terms I would like to use, but the purpose of that is to avoid confusion. That's why I would like to be very, very clear. We're going to talk about the power of intimacy how important it is for one's intimacy to be happy, to be successful, to be shared by both husband and wife. And most of the things I would like to talk here is nothing that you could find by watching a movie. Actually, watching a movie is usually what keeps you away from Shalom Bayit, from succeeding in your marriage. It gives you the false impression of what pleasure is really all about. And then when you try to experience that with your own spouse, you see it's not happening, you feel disappointed. So we're going to talk about the real chazal, the real life, what really intimacy should do to a person. But the reason why I'm bringing this out right now is just to show you that a person that feels that in all aspects of his life is well balanced. The way he gets dressed, his wife is always there to tell him if he's not dressed properly. The way he looks like, the way he runs his business, sometimes you can get advice from your wife. We're going to talk about hidden talents. The people, again, in parenting, we talk a lot about that. How many children grow up with hidden talents? But we forget to remember that many times adults live their lives with hidden talents that they never know of. And many times, if you get an Eshet Chayil for a wife, your wife would be able to tap on those talents that you never knew about. So, simcha, you get simcha by getting married with the right person. The Chazal say you get bracha. There's no bracha, le'aniach beracha el betecha. Betecha zo ishtecha. Without marriage, you cannot get to a full bracha. As a matter of fact, there are a lot of people that run for segulot. They're looking for segulot, how to enhance and to improve their financial situation. The Ben Ish Chai says that a very simple way. Hamchabed et ishto. If you honor your wife, you're going to have success in Parnasa. As simple as that. Doesn't cost any money. You don't have to write any checks to anyone. As simple as that. Sleep on that and try to see how that works. And it's a Gemara. Lo isha b'lo bracha. Bracha means Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha. Rashi says Yivarechecha means Parnasa. So the bracha that the wife could bring into the home is when the husband treats her properly, with dignity, with gentle care, and tender care, and gives her the attention that she needs so much, so badly. Belo tova, Chazal say, matzah isha matzah tov. If you're not married, you don't have tov. I'm afraid to tell you that some people have an addition to this, but that's not part of the pasuk. V'im lo matzah. Why? I can't put it here. It's being recorded. So belo isha belo tova. Matzah isha matzah tov, right? Belo isha, believe it or not, belo Torah. Belo Torah. Imagine the Torah that you learn is not complete until you're not Adam Shalem, Chazal say. You're not a perfect person until you get married. And probably we could also explain that in light of what we're discussing right now. The purpose of Torah is not just the knowledge of Torah, but it's how to apply the Torah values, the lifestyle that the Torah is trying to instill in all of us, the midot, the derech eretz. And this is what comes along with a good, healthy marriage. That's why belo isha, belo Torah. And I'll skip one, I'll get back to that. Belo isha, belo shalom. There's no shalom, there's no peace. It seems like peace of mind also. When you're well settled and you feel well balanced with your wife, you feel in peace with yourself. And there's one more. Belo isha, belo choma. What is a choma? A wall, a fence. In the olden days, cities were surrounded by walls as a means of protection. Let me ask you, how does your wife create protection for the husband? How is it possible? What kind of protection is it? Financial? Many people complain that the wife just swipes the credit card. These days you don't even need to swipe it. You have it on the phone, you just tap it. What is it? Tap? Not even tap. You just put it. So a lot of people complain the wife spends so much money, right? So what kind of protection do you think your wife could provide you with?
Spiritual,
right? Only spiritual?
No, physical too.
Physical too. How?
And the guy's Mushav, he has his wife at home.
Very good. So, Chazal say, and we know that amongst men, we could be honest. Men have a very strong weakness. Sorry to break this to you, you're probably aware of it. When it comes to temptation from a woman, we all know that. Men could fall very easily. I'll be very outright to you. And because of that, a person needs to be happy with his wife. We're going to talk more in details later on. And I mentioned that in last week's class to the women, how important it is for a woman to always look presentable at home for their husband. Just the opposite of what the secular world believes in. Again, you see, the secular world will do anything to ruin your marriage and your happiness in life. In the secular world, if a woman has to go out to the convenience store to buy a pack of whatever, she'll make sure to get dressed, makeup, and run to the store. But at home, big deal. Husband knows her. She could look like, I don't want to say what, and who cares? Like a Fatima. Or rather, like a fat Ima. And who cares? The husband is used to her. That's just opposite from the values of the Torah. There's a great Chacham in the Gemara who was walking back from the fields towards the city after a day of work. What was it? Ta'anit. Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa.
28.
Very holy Chacham that I think the Chachamim were always asking him to pray for rain whenever there was a drop. And when he would go back to the city, he was escorted by some of his students, and all of a sudden there was a beautiful looking woman walking towards him. So you can imagine in today's world, imagine a Hasidic Rebbe walking with his Hasidim around him, being escorted, and a beautiful looking woman coming close. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to keep her away like they did with Rabbi Akiva and his wife, Rachel. Naturally, this is a holy rabbi, don't come close. The rabbi says, no, let her. She's my wife. And I'm the one who asked her to come greet me before I even enter the city, all good looking, with makeup and everything. Why? So I won't have, chas v'chalila, a thought of a different woman. I want my wife on my side. Good looking. This is the Torah. This is the opinion of the Torah, the value of the Torah. Your wife has to be always good looking for you. That's how she would create a protection. A protection from what? From the immorality that is beyond what you could express with words. Year after year, you see how the lack of morality, the way people dress, women dress, or rather, opposite, walking the streets, is terrible. A man, naturally, to be honest with you, a man goes crazy when he's exposed to this kind of provocation from a woman. From women, he could go crazy, mad. He loses his balance. The Torah says you need a wife, a good-looking wife, to be the antidote, the protection that you need. And by the way, this is not the topic for tonight, but one of the reasons why these women are trying to provocate men, that's not the only reason, but one of the reasons because they need attention. Once again, it's not a secret. Women by nature need attention. Even men do. Women, I guess, need more. And if a woman is not properly complimented by her father, if she's not married, or husband when she's married, she would look for other ways to get attention. And therefore, we understand why, and we'll talk about this, how important it is for a man to express his feelings of appreciation to his wife. And believe me, I work in a girls' high school. I can tell you that women have no problem expressing their feelings, their emotions, sometimes even too much. Men do. So when I work with a Khatan, try to prepare a Khatan to his wedding, I try to remind him that as a man, you have to learn how to develop that skill of expressing your appreciation for your wife. Don't keep it inside. Your wife cannot read your thoughts. You have to express it. How do you express it? Could be verbally, a nice word. Could be gentle, affectionate touch, very important. Gesture, could be a gift once in a while. But you have to learn how to compliment your wife for whatever she deserves. Of course, you're not going to compliment her about something that she didn't earn, but something that she did deserve. Bring it up. And to just quote a little source in Chazal where we find the importance to express appreciation to one's wife. Mishnah Berurah in Ilchot Shabbat, in the halacha of Tashmish Amita on Shabbat, the Mishnah Berurah, the Chafetz Chaim writes that a person, the halacha, the Shulchan Aruch says that a person has to try to have a relation with his wife on Shabbat as part of Oneg Shabbat. And the Mishnah Berurah says, as such, a person should try to show chiba. Chiba means love. Chiba yetera, extra love. Ve'ahava. I guess chiba is more like cherish, to cherish your wife. Ahava, to show her love. On Erev Shabbat, even before Shabbat comes in. And now I want to tell you a secret. And like I mentioned before, I'll be very open. For the purpose of Shalom Bayit, we all know that a man could be very easily aroused by a woman, and by his own wife, hopefully. And women take time. Why? They need communication. They need to feel good with their husband. They have to feel that they're well loved by their husband before you could consider anything physical. Men are very physical. And I was asked by a son Rav, Chashuv Rav, to mention that. If I'm talking to men already, just 2 words, count down. Count down means what? Give your wife the time to feel happy with intimacy. Again, there's open, clearly quoted sources in Chazal where a man has to try not just to feel about his own pleasure, but about his wife's as well. And we'll get to talk about pleasure. What is the essence of pleasure in the Torah? Is it something positive or negative? What is true pleasure? And we're also going to touch upon the importance to make sure that when the husband is with his wife, it should be an enjoyable moment for both, not just husband, but wife as well, although it takes more preparation. And I won't go into details, but one thing I do want to mention is that when you, the type of person who brings up compliments to your wife whenever appropriate, a woman that walks around feeling always well complimented by her husband, in the words of Chazal, Imtzochen be'enei ba'ala, she's already 50% ready for intimacy, which means that when the time for intimacy will come, she's going to be halfway down the road already. Because like I mentioned, and this is an important part of marriage, intimacy is not just physical. It's also the ichud and neshamot. It's also the feeling of closeness to one another from the neshama, from the heart. Not just the physical pleasure that one could derive from that. And as such, especially on the woman's side, you need to build up this feeling of confidence, of happiness, to feel relaxed and well appreciated by the husband. That would not only help to bring happiness into the marriage, but even as far as intimacy is concerned, that would also get it further, much further ahead. So if I mentioned that you're supposed to appreciate your wife, don't run home tonight and say, my wife, you're the best, and you don't even know what to say. By the way, let me take my list. Here's the list I wrote about you. No, you have to come from your heart. You have to really mean what you're saying, obviously. And women are very, very smart. Bina yetera, Chazal tell us, women have a special bina. If you ever try to do something that's not sincerely meant, the way you express it to your wife, she'll know it right away. And she'll even bring it up to you sometimes. Right or wrong? Anybody? Okay, you don't have to disclose all your secrets, but I think it's common knowledge that women have that skill. They can tell if you don't mean what you're saying.
Keep it real.
So try to be. Now, on the other hand, if you don't stop and think about why I should appreciate my wife, it won't come by itself. You have to have a session. Now, I didn't plan a session of meditation for tonight, but stop and think. Why do I have to appreciate my wife? What exactly is she doing for me? I'll just throw a few examples now. In Chazal, we find the concept of akeret bait, a housekeeper. So, it means a woman usually runs the house. Most husbands come home from work. All they want is sitting on the couch, waiting for the meal to be served to them, hot meal, to their taste, and put their feet up, on the hide up, their legs, and relax, basically. A woman, on the contrary, coming from work, usually, she right away starts cooking, cleaning, shopping, caring for children. Let me open up a little parenthesis. Caring for children. Do you realize the Mesirut Nefesh? You know what the Mesirut Nefesh means, right? Mesirut Nefesh that a woman has to go through to bear a child. If you ever took your wife to the delivery room and you try to think what could be happening, if not everything goes right. Your wife is literally risking her life for every single child that she brings to the world. And that's not even getting into what she goes through for 9 months of pregnancy. She can't go to the gym, she can't go up the steps fast, she has to carry a heavy thing. It takes all her strength. In some pregnancies, there's high-risk pregnancies. So pregnancy is a challenge. Delivery is another one. The nursing period. There was a Rav who said that the best simcha of a child for a mother is the bar mitzvah. You know why? Because the brit milah, she's usually misken, she can hardly walk. And by the wedding, there's this daughter-in-law that she has to deal with. So the bar mitzvah is the right one. So just to tell you, after delivery, it's not fun for a woman to be, for months and months. She has to recuperate. In Chazal, we found that it takes 24 months. That's why they don't have to fast for 24 months after delivery. So this is how much a woman goes. And don't forget, this is just the beginning. Then you have the journey of raising the children. And boy, you know what it means these days. Many times the mother is more involved, implied than the husband, than the father. Isn't that a reason to appreciate your wife? But again, you have to stop and think. That's what the whole power of Musar, we've been taught in the world of yeshivot, that you have to set time every day to meditate, to think over your day, see what you could do better. And this is a very important aspect of what you should do. And now, for the women of our generation, this is not all. I left out a very important component of the day of a new woman these days, which is, you could tell me, besides for doing all the housekeeper tasks and duties, what else do women do these days? Work. And if you're a tough guy, you expect out of your wife to have not a part-time job, a full-time job, on top of all this. Being pregnant, nursing kids, cleaning the house, cooking, shopping. And on top of that, husband comes tired from home. What does he do? He yells at his wife. He finds something bad that she did. On top of all that in Chazal, we find that this is not the job of a woman to go work outside. And I'm not telling you should stop your wife from doing that. But don't forget that she's doing that on top of all the other chores and duties that she is entitled to do for generations. All the housekeeping chores. On top of that, she has to work. Sometimes as many hours as the husband does. Isn't that a reason to appreciate your wife? and express it. Remember to express it in any possible way you can. Don't you think she deserves that? So let me ask you, aren't Chazal trying to help us to enhance our lives, our happiness, to have just find the right things to look for, to the right priorities in life? This is not a debate here for Shidduchim. I think everybody here is settled, Baruch Hashem. At least I hope so. But there's a book that came out called The Shidduch Secrets. I even unofficially shared some of the insights I read there with high school girls. The main focus that I wanted to bring up is that set your priorities in the right way. A lot of times you have a whole list of requirements that you expect to find in a potential mate that you're meeting. It could bring some memories back to some of you. And many times those priorities don't enhance the happiness that you could find in marriage. When you talk to a girl, remind her perhaps it would be more important, rather than looking for someone who drives a nice car, who has plenty of money, who is social and popular, who could be the talk of town. Maybe look for somebody, even sometimes a little bit more simple than that, but someone who would care for you, would respect you, love you, like what we're talking about right now. So this is what Chazal bring up. Also, a very important thing, and by the way, I forgot to mention, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Rabbi Kadosh is here. You'll tell me when I should stop. I still have much to talk, but please let me know when.
Your call. You said we were gonna.
Maybe 15 minutes?
Yeah, I think that's
Okay. Always stand up and defend your wife. Always. Never allow anyone to say anything bad about your wife, even if it's true. Whether it's in a group setting or it's at home. Sometimes children, unfortunately, could talk negatively, but derogatorily about one of the parents. You always stand up for your spouse, whether right or wrong. She's like yourself. Don't ever talk like this about mommy. Do you realize what she does for you? What she goes through for you? I'm sure she didn't mean what you think she did. You always have to defend your wife. And unfortunately, you find sometimes men sitting together, could be even at a kiddush or whatever, and you hear some talks. It could be sometimes even the husband talking negatively about his wife. How is it possible? For someone that sits and meditates about all that we brought up tonight, all the reasons for which you have to appreciate your wife, how could a person ever say any bad word to other people in public about his own wife? And remember, people who go into a divorce, doesn't happen overnight. That's people who did not live the type of life that we're talking about now, who did not spend time appreciating one another, loving one another, respecting one another. Because if that's the case, they don't end up with difficult divorces like many times, too many times, unfortunately. I just would like to announce the next part of the class. We're just going to have a few more minutes. And Be'ezrat Hashem, in 2 weeks, we're going to meet again. For those of you who feel that is what to learn from such a gathering. I think we said Tuesday the 7th of February, 8 o'clock here, Be'ezrat Hashem. This was suggested that we don't drag the class too long. So we're just going to go a few more minutes. And an important part of the shiur is to review some of the halachot of Taharat HaBayit. But I do definitely want to spend much time on the aspect of Shalom Bayit, which is much too often needed. So we're just going to touch a little bit about some of the halachot, but mainly next time, Be'ezrat Hashem, will continue. Before we move on to that, I would like to talk about pleasure. What is pleasure? What does the Torah hold of pleasure? Is pleasure a good thing? So, I'm not sure if you know, but in the Christian world, Pleasure is very negative. Woman is considered like evil because she's a source of temptation for a man. And many times, unfortunately, these kind of theories and philosophies seep into our midst, and we, wrongfully so, associate pleasure to something negative. So let me first share with you what the view of Torah, the vision of Torah in regards to pleasure. The Torah believes that pleasure is definitely not something negative, of course when appropriate. It may even be a mitzvah. What's the simple correlation analogy that we can make with pleasure when it's a mitzvah? Any mitzvah where you have to take pleasure?
On Shabbat.
Purim, Oneg Shabbat, beautiful.
Simcha, it should be Simcha.
Simcha, very good. So Oneg Shabbat, let's take for example Oneg Shabbat. That doesn't mean to say that you have to wait for Shabbat in order to enjoy the Arisa or the Chamin or the Cholent or whatever it may be. That's not the goal of waiting for Shabbat. But at the same time, the Torah wants you to enjoy the Chamin. It's a mitzvah. Bekarat ala Shabbat Oneg. According to some poskim, it's a mitzvah on the Torah level. Very, very important mitzvah. Why? What's positive about it? You know what's positive about it? When you use the power of pleasure to elevate yourself, to uplift yourself, then it becomes a mitzvah. That's why Shabbat, we start Shabbat with Kiddush. Kiddush, you're supposed to have wine, and if you have good wine, you should try the best one you have at home, to reserve it for Kiddush, and you have to drink Melo Lugmav enough to give you pleasure from drinking. If you just take a little sip, like some people that don't know the halakha, Kiddush is invalid. It's as if you ate without Kiddush. So why? Because Kiddushav Shabbat, you can enhance it much more when you have the pleasure of Oneg Shabbat, this serenity, a serene atmosphere at home, family time, and all that we know about that is so crucial for spending a good Shabbat, elevating ourselves through Shabbat. And you could obviously compare this to the pleasure one could derive through marriage, through relationship, which interestingly enough is also related to by the term of Kiddushin, Kiddusha. How does pleasure lead to Kiddusha, to anything positive that would allow a person to elevate himself? So we have to know, and again, this is a secret I'm revealing to you. So one line in Rashi, Gemara Sanhedrin, Nun Chet Amud Bet, on the concept of Vedavak Beishto. The Torah says you should cling to your wife. That's when a person gets married. Vayule Basar Echad, beautiful. Sounds very romantic. What does it really mean? Rashi says, in order for husband and wife to both cling to each other, don't only think of yourself to cling to her, make sure that she also clings to you. In order for both to be able to cling to each other, you need to make sure that both enjoy intimacy. I won't give you exact scenario that Rashi brings down from the Gemara over there. I'll leave it up to you if you want to look it up. But basically, if there's no pleasure for the wife at the time of intimacy, you did not fulfill your duty, and more so, you did not create a strong bond between you and her. I'll tell you even more. And remember when I mentioned men, you got to count down. Again, this is not my line. Because we need to be patient to allow our wives to be able to enjoy that moment of intimacy, which is so crucial, so important to create the bond. Like Rashi says, without hana'ah, you cannot create the strong bond with each other. Each of the two spouses has to be able to feel great joy and pleasure at this moment to be able to cling to each other. Otherwise, the woman was not allowed to reach her climax, may even be hurt, feel hurt, not only emotionally, which we all understand, but even physically. the actual intercourse could hurt, could create physical hurt and pain to a woman, to one's wife, of course. And what's the outcome of it? If this is taking place, that would cause the wife to resent intimacy. The next time around, she'll think twice before going with her husband. And what's after that? The vicious cycle. If intimacy doesn't go well, some people keep it to yourself, but it's wrong. Gotta use some advice from the proper sources like we mentioned before. Never to let this go by as if it's not important. That same Torah that says you have to separate from your wife when she's in Nida, that same Torah says when she's not, you got to do everything to enhance the pleasure of intimacy with your wife. It's actually a mitzvah from the Torah. So true, some people are looking for instant pleasure, especially men. It's easier for men actually, because in our society everything is instant. But you have to learn how to create that pleasure and give her the pleasure that she deserves in order for that bond to take place between the two of you, v'davak v'ishto, to cling to one another. Next time, Bezrat Hashem, I just want to mention one thing about the halachot, that the subject of halachot of Taharat HaMishpacha is not well known, not only in the modern world, but even in the religious world, for a very simple reason. That this is not something you bring up at the Shabbat table. Or at least I hope so. Right, Michael? You do that? You don't do that? No? I don't do that maybe either. So, like halachot of brachot, melachot of Shabbat, sometimes you share with the family, it's great. But Taharat HaMishpacha, in Meknes, there was a woman who came to this Rav that I took the course from, who came crying to the Rav, and she said, back in Meknes, when I got married, I hardly heard from my mother the word mikveh, and it was all about it. Now, I want to tell you that this is false modesty, and I said it to the woman as well. The area of Taharat HaMishpacha cannot be run by oneself. Certainly when the spouse is not sharing it with his wife. But sometimes you need guidance from a Rav, from a Chacham. Even in the area of halachot, not only halachot of Taharat HaMishpacha, but also in the area of intimacy. And it's so important that men and women both study together. We'll see why next time. And I just want to initiate the different topics that we're going to bring up next time. Again, there's other secrets I would like to disclose to the Kahal over here. Anashim Chashuvim who are coming here to bring Kiddush Shem Shamayim, to bring Shalom Bayit. The importance of Ma'im Gnuvim, prohibited pleasure. How sweet that is. Shlomo HaMelech says, Ma'im Gnuvim Yimtaku. How does one taste that? We'll learn about it, Bezrat Hashem, next time. And we'll talk also about something that in a secular world would be called fiction. And I would like to disclose it with you next time, Bezrat Hashem. The kind of statement you could come up with one day. Hopefully, you should be able to feel that sincerely and be able to disclose that to your wife, each and every one of you. How you could express to her what she means to you. And again, when I'm going to say it over, I thought about it very much. It's going to sound like something very romantic. It's going to sound like romance, like fiction, like not real world. And we'll see that it shouldn't be that way, that we should aim to make it real and happening. And I'll be very, very open, like I said, I'll talk about very open, outright terms about what you could express to your wife that you enjoy in her and how it is. That's another part of the discussion for next time, that what you could do to be able to enjoy every part of your wife, not just her soul and spirit, but even her body. And we'll talk about the important mitzvah of Shmirat HaEinayim. I'll just end up with that because it's related to Rabbi Basari alav shalom. And I know it's not easy to talk about this in public, but we know as men, we all have this challenge to be distracted by a woman's sight, woman appearance, especially when they try to provocate us. There's a story of a man who sat down in a bus in Eretz Israel. And in the summer, not everybody's dresses properly. And this group of women walk in, they were not dressed properly. So he decided to look down. He was a religious man. And then by the next bus station, another group of girls walk in, probably worse than the first one. Again, he looks down. Then he realizes, why should I put myself into a challenge? Let me just move back to the back of the bus. And then he sits back, a little bit more peaceful there. And then he started dozing off. He feels very heavy head and starts falling asleep. And here he goes. This is a dream. He's having a dream. A person telling him, there are wires under your seat. You gotta get up and run away. Frightened, he wakes up. Chalom shavi daberu. What's a dream? Big deal. Again, falls back to sleep a second time. And this person coming said, I'm warning you, I'm telling you, this is not a joke. There are wires underneath you. This time he wakes up, he checks, and sure enough, wires are sticking out. He alerts the driver that finds out that this was a bomb that was about to get detonated. And sure enough, he tells everybody to leave the bus. After that, everybody's saved. They bring the squad of, in Israel, they have a special squad for that. And he goes to Baba Salih. For some reason, he wanted to go to see Baba Salih. Before he even opens up his mouth, Baba Salih says, you know what happened to you? Every time you ran away from this challenging nisayon that you had, when the woman walked in, you created a malach. And you did it twice. Those two malachim became your sanegorim. And they are the ones who came to you in a dream twice. Each one was a different malach to save you. And not only that, you should know there was a gzera on the occupants of this bus, that they should all be chas v'chalila perishing. And because of your mitzvah, you and all the other people got saved. So because tomorrow night is Baba Salih's Yortzeit, I wanted to bring this up just to show that, sure, we have challenges. And there are Sfarim that talk about what happens, a person tries and then is not successful. Doesn't matter. Every time you turn away from an inappropriate sight, you create a malach. This malach will save your life. So, Baruch Hashem, we end with this. There's much more to talk about next time. I urge you all to come. We didn't even go halfway through. But I want to thank everybody and Rabbi Kadosh for allowing us to have a shiur. Baruch Hashem, thank you for all of you. And Yeshuot v'nechamot, nisim v'niflaot. I myself had a great miracle that happened to me last night. Maybe that's why I said that we'll see that when you like someone, Shabbat vaynafash, that's when you start to appreciate. My wife happens to be in Israel for 13 days already. And last night she lost her purse. She had a bag and a purse inside with her phone, cell phone, her passport, her driver's license, credit card, everything. And she went back. My daughter's in the hospital, back and forth everywhere with her parents. Couldn't find it. I lit the candle for Baba Salih last night. And this morning, at 2 a.m, actually, they woke me up. They said, Baruch Hashem, they found it. What happened was a much similar story. My wife was pushing her grandchild in a stroller into the bus, and the whole bag fell to the floor. Chefetz chashud. In Israel, you don't play games. Right away, within seconds, the police squad is here. Everybody off the bus. They tried to do something. Eventually, they saw it was not chefetz chashud. They brought him to the police quarter. And Min Hashem, this morning, she was able to relocate that. And Baruch Hashem, everything is good. But just to tell you, the zchut of tzaddikim, the advice we get from tzaddikim is priceless. Tomorrow night is the Hilullah. I understand tomorrow you're having a function here. Bezrat Hashem. Zchut v'imtzu, zchut tzaddikim, again ba'adenu. Thank you very much.